All right, super live.
You're getting the clearance there. Okay, well, I don't believe it until I see it, but I got us here. So good. I'm going to see, put this on gallery. There's everyone. Folks, welcome to Quantum Leap with David and Corey. And I just have this initial flyer up that I guess I can share that again when it comes up. I'll take us full screen here. But we are, this is actually our last episode before our long break. Corey and I are planning some interesting things, but we don't know when we're going to be back on the air after this, apart from the fall, which is our normal return. So other than that, we're excited to have a special guest, Jesse Schmidt, on, who's really part of our business and networking mastermind here in Oakland. And he has some great insights to share with us and talk about the creation of this Rotary Mastermind event, which we're really excited about. And a lot of this is, in line with some of the teachings of Corey as well. But Corey, if you don't mind just introducing yourself, and then we'll get going.
Hey everyone, Corey Knott here, and I am a business coach with Take Wing Coaching, and here with you. And well, thank you for being here.
Yeah, and Jesse is actually a trainer here in Oakland and a successful business owner. I was actually doing one of your workouts this morning, Jesse. I've tried some other things, and you convinced me to to return to what works. So it was great. But with that, I'm going to just let you introduce yourself, Jesse. And if you don't mind telling us about this Rotary Mastermind event, we try to, sometimes we talk too much on this show, so we like to highlight our guests. So rather than me introduce the event, I'm going to have you introduce the event and tell us where it came from.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dave. My name is Jesse Schmidt, and I'm the co-owner of TNT Strength in Oakland, California. And we just celebrated our 2-year anniversary, so that's very exciting. I've been an Oakland Rotarian at Oakland number 3 for a little over 4 years now, and I'm the current chair of the Business Development Committee within the Oakland Rotary Club. And for the listeners out there or the watchers, me and Dave Kirsten have been dreaming up a totally new type of event, and we're calling it Rotary Mastermind. And basically, we realized that the Rotary Club of Oakland, which has over 270 members in it, is home to some incredible entrepreneurs, business owners, business leaders, and not just in business, organizational, so nonprofit leaders as well. From founders and owners to executives and presidents. And so we're putting this event together. The tagline is, it's a free, exclusive event where successful Oakland leaders help aspiring organizational leaders break through to the next level. And we're very excited. It's going to be hosted at the New Parkway Theater on Thursday, May 18th from 5 to 7 p.m. And, just the bottom line is that, no matter who you are in business or nonprofit, everybody's scrambling to make their organizations, as effective as they possibly can be to help whoever they're trying to help. And so we want to give them an assist by sort of showcasing all of the success and experience that we have within the Rotary Club of Oakland.
Yeah, I love it. And, I actually did come from a background in public budgeting, and, I've looked at a lot of nonprofits, and listening to that book, Profit First, which I'm going to share. This is loosely based on these 4 key books, which we're going to talk about. I just see such a similarity between nonprofit needs, budgeting, success, and small businesses as well, that it takes a lot of the same toolkits. And we're going to get into that as we go on to Rotary Mastermind. But why did you think it was important to kind of include other organizational leaders? And what do you see as some of the similarities between small business and other leaders in terms of this mastermind event?
I mean, at the end of the day, the way I kind of look at things is whether we're in business or a nonprofit, everybody's out there to make the world better in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through software or through charitable giving or through, providing, a service that, helps a specific demographic. We're all just out to make the world a better place. And it just sort of shakes out that some of us are working for profit and some are working nonprofit. But why all of these books, in my opinion, are crucial is that they all sort of encompass these fundamental organizational, just like foundational concepts that we have to master in order to run effective organizations. So it really is irrelevant whether you're working for profit or nonprofit. All 4 of these books are going to have very, practicable, actionable, concepts to apply. So we're very excited to be sharing these resources with the people who attend the Rotary Mastermind event. And because they are such foundational concepts, we really think that future events are going to sort of layer on top of one another. This stuff it's got to sink in, and you really have to practice it over and over and over to get it down. So we're kind of the framework for the Rotary Mastermind event comes out of that top book there, How to Grow Your Small Business by Donald Miller. Donald Miller uses this analogy of an airplane to represent an organization. So you have, he's talking about for profit, but basically there are 6 key elements that have to be going well for an organization to be effective. So that's 1, leadership, which would be the cockpit of the airplane; 2, sales, which is the left engine; 3, marketing, which is the right engine; 4, products and services, which is the wings; 5 would be your overhead or operating expenses, which is the body of the airplane; and 6, which is your cash flow, and that represents the fuel in the plane. So if any of those areas are not going well, chances are your business is losing money or running in the red, or maybe even failing. Or if you're at kind of a more advanced stage of business, maybe you're working with a publicly traded company or just on a larger scale, you've expanded past the mom and pop startup phase. Maybe you're just not getting as much out of your team as you could be, or as much out of yourself as a leader as you could be. And so really breaking it down and compartmentalizing each element of the business into this airplane analogy can really help you analyze, what part of your organization needs to improve to get to the next level.
Great. And I did want to talk about a few of these books kind of just in a nutshell. And you talked about that first one. I was listening to Profit First. That was the first I'd heard of it from what you told me, but in listening to the concept, and this guy, I almost feel like he deserves to be up for a Nobel Peace Prize or something.
Yeah.
The importance of this book and the system, and really the relevance it has to solopreneurs, all small businesses, all businesses really. And the segment I was listening to earlier, he said, so much of what business owners put out there is complete BS. Everybody's doing great, they say that, but that's not really the truth. It's really this prevailing concept mentality really out there in business to not earn a profit, to actually kind of be scraping by. Even the best businesses that look the best are one bad month away from bankruptcy or being in really tough straits. And this book really crystallizes so many powerful concepts. And I haven't gotten to the point where he's going to get me out of that, but his story, I think, is one of the most amazing that I've heard, and his willingness to tell it in this kind of brutal honesty, where he sold a $1 million plus business, and he got this first check for $380,000, and he went out that same day and bought 3 cars. He went onto the lot and got the most expensive Land Rover. He got a Dodge Viper, and then one other car, I forget what it was, and he, to make a long story short, within a few years, when he thought he'd already made it, he was basically down to his last $10,000 and he owed 30,000. He looked back at all the dumb stuff he did, vacations. And anyway, I think it's a fascinating read. And I just wanted to see if you could tell us a little bit about this Profit First and what you've kind of gleaned from that book.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, for anybody watching or listening to this, these three authors, Donald Miller, Michael Gerber, and Mike Michalowicz, all mention each other in each other's books. So there not only do the concepts cross over, but the authors are friendly with one another. They're not sort of selling their own. I mean, there are unique differences in each of these books, but we're talking about these concepts as fundamental, and to me that's validating of each of their individual sort of systems that they're talking about. And with Mike Michalowicz and Profit First, I mean, it sounds pat when you talk about it, but he talks about organizations need to be profitable to survive, period. If you're not profitable, maybe it takes a while, but your business or organization cannot survive. You have to be profitable. And in Profit First, he gives a lot of tools and perspectives to help your organization become profitable right now. Because this is not being profitable is an existential threat to your business or your organization, which means that if you're not profitable, and if you're not profitable immediately, there can be severe consequences. The worst of which would be your organization failing completely. Next in line is, having to lay off employees, scaling back your operating expenses. I mean, there are a lot of really painful, things that can happen. And so that's his passion, is helping other businesses become profitable, because it is an urgent need. Nonprofits are not profitable per se, right? But they still need to be running in the black in order to keep running, growing, scaling, helping more people, which is what all of us are out there to do. The more people you help, the more value your organization provides to the world at large, and the more returns you see, to your bottom line. So Profit First really is, for me, just a fundamental. These four books you have here, Dave, to me, they're the business Bible.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I'm always looking for those key works. And, I was reminded of the Chinese proverb, we never see what we see until we're ready to see it. And I think maybe I wasn't quite ready for all of these books until now. And I think when we started talking about these, light bulb went on. I just love the brilliance of this concept. And part of it's that Corey kind of prepared me for this in large part by seeing how we got to keep doing like the same things over and over. That's not really about how many books we learn, but it's about learning the right things and, sticking to that and finding our weaknesses. We might have one fatal flaw in our business. I just want to give Corey a chance to comment on these first two books, or the fundamentals of business. If you have any thoughts, Corey, before we talk about these second two, which I know you're also familiar with. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add to what you said there. Obviously, as a coach, it's important. And sometimes, we either go from books or we help people just realize the fundamentals. It just depends on the person that I'm working with in terms of whether they like to read and study and grow that way, or if they would prefer just to be, walk through the fundamentals and doing them. Another book I think that Jesse might like, just because it was actually developed by somebody who had been in personal training business and started a gym. And I'm trying to bring this up here because I can never get the name right. Is Founder, Farmer, Tinker, Thief by Chris Cooper. And he talks about having developed a gym, and then he's got a great equation in there, which is basically your hourly rate, right? So it's your effective hourly rate, where you just take up all the hours you work each year and how much money you bring in, and that's your hourly rate. And when you look at that and you think, okay, so if we're at $50 an hour, anything that I'm doing that's less than 50 is probably not very profitable for me.
Yep.
I turn that over to. And so that's, it's just helping people with these fundamentals can be huge. And one of the things about Profit First too is there are actually bookkeepers who specialize in that. We had one in our BNI chapter. Unfortunately, he moved away, but there are some who do that. So working with somebody who can help put those systems into place can be extremely valuable.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Corey. All of these books, in my opinion, like I said, have very practical advice. So a big element of the Profit First system is that you should have separate bank accounts, right? That we're not just taking all of our revenue and pouring it into one bank account that covers our operating expenses and our taxes and our profit and our, everything, right? So this very practical recommendation he has is you need 5 different bank accounts. And so that the bank accounts cover your profit, which is the first account you should be paying into. You should be budgeting for your profit every single month. And if you have no budget for your profit, something needs to get fixed. Probably your operating expenses need to get lowered down. And we know that, usually in a business, the biggest part of your operating expenses is payroll. So you might have to take a pay cut. You might need to, you might need to take a hard look at your staff and see, do we need all of these people here? And because, again, to Dave's point, right, you have to look at the hard truth of the business. Is it viable? And if the answer is no, a change needs to be made to prevent even more hurtful things from having to happen, like a business failing. So, so there's the profit account, there's the operating expenses account, there's the taxes. This is something that a lot of, especially small business owners I know, don't budget for taxes. So they get hit with this tax bill, when tax season rolls around and they have no idea what to do. And that's a problem. There's also an investment account, right? So you just have money sitting around. Like you don't want it just sitting in an account. You want that money making money. And I always forget what the last one is. But anyway, point is, read the book and split your money up, right? That's another fundamental here, right? Is know your numbers, know what your operating expenses is. This is Mike Macedonio, big, right, BNI guy. Hanging out with Richard Branson and Ivan Misner and Corey Knott, all the big wigs. He likes to talk about how the most successful people he knows, a common denominator, is they always know their numbers. And that's what it means. Know what your operating expenses are on a monthly basis, right? Know what is your profit margin? What does your OpEx look like? What do you need to budget for taxes every year? These are essential numbers to know. That part of the reason we're putting on this Rotary Mastermind event is that you guys know this, and I know this because we all talk with a lot of small business owners, is that whether they admit it or not, most small business owners don't know their numbers.
Yeah, a lot of, we often say sometimes we don't want to know the numbers, but to really, if you're in a hole, the first step is to recognize that you're in one. And
stop digging.
It's funny. I've analyzed a lot of balance sheets in my day, probably over 1,000 of public agencies. And the first thing I look at is their 10-year numbers, like where you've been for revenues and expenditures over 10 years. And, that's what if somebody's looking at buying your business, that's what they look at. And I think that's a little bit nice segue to the E-Myth here, which I think's a brilliant business book. That was one of the early books I looked at, and I'm so glad that you showed me these others, Jesse, because I'm going to listen to these all within the next probably 3 or 4 months. I listened to them at the gym on Audible, and then I also have hard copies. But if you don't mind just telling us a little bit about the E-Myth.
Yeah, so that's a great perspective to take, Dave, is that as a business owner, very few people get in, and these authors point this out, right? Is that very few people get into business just to run the business because they like running a business, right? We get into business or we're running an organization because of the mission of the organization. It's helping people. The way I see it is the more people I help, the more profit we see as a byproduct of that, right? Or if you're in a nonprofit, the more money you raise. And so if you're trying to scale an organization, or you're trying to become more profitable, or you're trying to sell your business, If you're trying to do anything but spend all of your waking hours working in the business, and probably your sleeping hours too, because let's face it, if you're stuck in the business all the time, you're probably having nightmares about working in your business too. You see a lot of small business owners doing that. But the E-myth, so E stands for entrepreneur. It's not electronic, right? It's the entrepreneur myth. And so the myth of the entrepreneur is that if you are a technical master of your craft, that you should go start a business. And why that's a myth is because you have to realize that as the technician in your business, that is a completely different hat than wearing the entrepreneur hat. And it's also a different hat than wearing the manager hat. These are three different hats that we have to wear, and we have to be able to switch in and out of as organizational leaders. Sometimes we need to be entrepreneurial, sometimes managerial, and sometimes we have to be an expert in the craft. And in order to become more profitable or scale a business or sell a business, we need to build systems, right? And so we have to somehow extricate ourselves as the owner of the business from the daily operations of the business to build a system that is self-sustaining until ultimately we're no longer necessary. We can be involved if we want, but we're no longer integral to the daily operations of the business. And to your point, Dave, if you ever want to sell your business, it's a big red flag to a potential buyer if the owner of the business is involved in all of the daily operations. It lowers the value of the business, and if you can even attract a buyer, because you are the business at that point. And again, this is something we all see. Common denominator with many small business owners is that they are the business, and they are great at what they do from the technical standpoint. But my advice to those people would be to do what Mike Michalowicz, the author of Profit First, recommends, which is that sometimes we need to throttle up the entrepreneur and the manager and throttle down the technician. And this is why there's a great synergy between these books, because Michael Gerber gives us the E-myth framework of building systems and gets us in that headspace. And Mike Michalowicz reminds us that just because you're trying to wear multiple hats, you should not necessarily fully shift away from wearing the other hats. And I can speak from experience on that one. When we first opened our brick and mortar, my co-owner and I were the only two people working in the business. And I had read the E-myth, but I hadn't read Profit First. So I didn't know about the throttle. I hadn't thought about that really. So we hired our first trainer, and immediately I tried to get as many clients over to him as possible, because he's a great trainer, and I knew they would have a great experience. But I hadn't really thought through clearly to realize that I had been the one to build up all this rapport with my clients over the years, right? And I was the one that some of them wanted to train with. So rather than having it be more of a slow process of building rapport with them, I tried to be a little bit more sort of pushy about it. And we lost a few people because of that. And that was really unfortunate, because we had a really good relationship. And that I do see that as at the time, one of my failings. Obviously, it's a learning experience because I've been able to reflect on that now. But people experience that same type of stuff, that same type of growing pain in their own organization. So really important to sort of balance those concepts there.
Great. And just a quick time check. Are you guys okay until about 11:40 or so?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I do want to talk about this last book, because I think it's one of the most interesting, in that I love communications. I think this book's critical, and then I'm going to hand it over to Corey. But if you can just tell us about this Building a Story Brand, it really sounds like another equally important book, if not even more important from a marketing perspective.
Yeah. So this is another Donald Miller book, and Donald Miller did a bunch of research and basically found out that there is a framework for telling a story that really keeps people engaged to a much higher degree than most any other framework. And so if you think about Star Wars, for example, the Building a Story Brand framework needs to establish a hero, right, or a main character. And the hero has a problem. And the hero is going to meet a guide, right? Obi-Wan Kenobi. So Luke Skywalker meets Obi-Wan, who, Luke's all distraught because his aunt and uncle were killed by the evil empire. And now he's got a chip on his shoulder, right? So Obi-Wan Kenobi teaches him that, you know, he can be a Jedi, and he gives him this plan, and he's like, you got to go train with Yoda, right? And so Yoda calls this guy to action after training. He's like, look, you know how to use the Force, you got to go out there and fight. And Luke's like, oh, I don't know, but he does it. And so in the process, he becomes a Jedi, and he goes through this entire transformation where, you know, he's becoming a hero, he's becoming a Jedi, and he's, you know, saving the galaxy from the evil empire. And that's what we have to realize as organizational leaders, is that we are not the heroes ourselves. We are Obi-Wan Kenobi. We're the guide. And the people that we're helping, either in our business or our nonprofit, they are the heroes. And when we make people feel like heroes, that is what affects our bottom line. Okay, so the Building a Story Brand framework gives us concrete steps that will help create a clear picture of how our organization turns our core demographic into a hero. And there's a lot of supportive stuff in here, how that goes into building an effective website. A lot of people's marketing gives extraneous information, and it's confusing, or it doesn't say enough, or it isn't clear for a variety of reasons. And the Building a Story brand framework really like cuts out all the BS and just gives you the most important stuff that people need to know to really understand the transformation, right? How they're going to turn into the Jedi, because that's what people want. They want to go through a transformation. That's why they're seeking out our products and services in the first place. Dave, you went silent here. You're still silent, Dave.
Yeah, it looks like your microphone's not working there, dude.
Strange.
There you go. Right.
Okay, it's working.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I love that framing for Rotary Mastermind, that we're helping them, you know, become the hero, and we're kind of facilitators. And I think that's something that I've really learned from Corey about coaching is, I think, I see with people out there in the small business community, they want to work with people who are going to, you know, help them reach it. You don't necessarily want a coach who's kind of all about them. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Corey for any comments in the second part of the interview.
Yeah, I would throw in another book there too, which is Starts with Why. It's Simon Sinek.
Absolutely.
And we use that substantially in our work with referral marketing, because in BNI and other groups and organizations, especially when you're networking, you are attempting to build relationships, and if people don't really know why you do what you do, they don't really know how to connect with you. And so that can be one of the values of being in organizations and networking, is actually getting some practice telling your story, right? Because we just isolate in our business. We don't often get that opportunity except with clients, and that's not usually the best time to be practicing. Yeah. So how would you, what would you say are your plans for a Rotary Mastermind then?
Well, we have a great slate of speakers for this first event. We have Sean Marks, who's a longtime Rotarian. He, started and scaled an office supply business, sold it for millions, and now he spends his time coaching CEOs. So he's going to be one of our speakers. We also have Nancy Williams, who was in corporate marketing for 20 plus years and now is a franchise owner of Money Pages of Oakland, and she's going to talk about marketing. And we also have Lorna Padilla Marcus, who is a former past president of the Oakland Rotary Club, and she's also a partner in a large accounting firm, and she's going to talk with everybody about cash flow. So we have some exciting topics and speakers, with all of whom have a lot of experience and a lot of just practical knowledge to give. And we want this, this is not it's not a weekend long conference, right? This is going to be an event that is, 2 hours long, just hard hitting, practical, actionable advice where people are going to walk away with resources and calls to action to improve their organizations to, the day after the event. I think people are going to be really fired up to be at this event, and it's at a great venue, right? The New Parkway is an awesome place to go see a show, watch a movie. You know, they have great food, and yeah, it's going to be a really fun ambiance. It's going to be. I'm excited that the Rotary Club is going to showcase some of its amazing leaders on a stage with a microphone, and at a public facing event, because we do a lot of sort of you know, interior stuff with you know, Rotarians and their families. Yeah, this is really the first time that I can remember in the 4 years that I've been a Rotarian where we're doing an event that is sort of external facing and inviting, you know, so many members of the community in.
Great. And I'd just say it probably wouldn't have been possible without a lot of the kind of trailblazing work you've done at the BDC committee, Jesse. I feel like it's taken us a little while to get to this point because we have kind of cultivated some of these contacts and interests in the club. And I think that's going to really help us get attendance, but also create this mastermind going forward.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. You know, you've been right there with me most of the time, so I appreciate your help. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Danny Mai, who was started the business development committee and really pushed it forward in its first 5 years of existence. I call him lovingly the Godfather because yeah, just so much credit goes to him. You know, what's interesting, there's a lot of crossover between the Rotary Club and BNI. You guys might know that Ivan Meisner, the founder of BNI, was a Rotarian for 18 years before he founded BNI. And I really think that he has done an incredible job taking some of the best elements of Rotary and blending them in his newer organization of BNI. I think there's a lot of accountability in BNI, and it really is a fantastic organization. But Rotary essentially was BNI, you know, when it was in its inception over 100 years ago. And so I am excited that right now there is a local in Oakland push, and there's also a push at the Rotary district level to sort of get back to the roots of the Rotary Club and make it not as much, and it's not that we're taking focus away from charitable giving, but just sort of allowing business networking to come back into the picture a little bit.
I love it. I'm excited for the future there. And Corey, I didn't mean to cut you off. That's probably music to your ears. I actually didn't know Ivan was a Rotarian for that many years. That's fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah, we always tell people to join 3 networking groups, right? So your loose networking group like a chamber, hard networking contact group like BNI, and then a community-oriented one like Rotary.
Yeah, I mean, if people are business owners or organizational leaders and no one in your organization is doing referral marketing, I just think you are passing up on a massive opportunity. Having been in business, you know, we opened our brick and mortar 2 years ago, but you know, we started our business 3 years ago, and it was a year before we even opened our business that I became an Oakland Rotarian. I've been a BNI member for almost 3 years now, basically right when we started our business. And I've been reflecting lately because we're you know, constantly assessing our marketing to make sure that that right engine is flying right, you know, and looking back, I mean, it's network marketing by far and away has been the most effective way for us to find new clients. You can mess around with other stuff, but I just, you know, and it makes logical sense, right? What is network marketing? Network marketing is the nitty gritty stuff. You're getting into the community and getting your hands dirty and meeting people face to face and building relationships, you know, so you can try other stuff and, you know, try not to get into the community. But if you want to really be built into the fabric of your community and the world at large, if you have a larger, you know, organization, in my opinion, you have to take part in network marketing. There's no way around it.
Right. And I would actually then throw in 2 more books for reading there. Of course, is The World's Best Known Marketing Secret by Ivan Meisner and Mike Macedonio. Yeah. Right. So that talks all about how to make your referral marketing effective and draws upon, you know, a lot of these other things. And then The Tipping Point, which is actually a very short book by Malcolm Gladwell.
Yep.
Right. And so it talks a little bit about what type of what type of business owner or what type of networker you are and how you can be more effective in that.
Thank you, Corey. I've made a couple notes during this interview here. I actually haven't read that Ivan Misner book, but I'm going to now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really do, having been a BNI member for several years now, I feel blessed to, at first it's kind of like, oh, okay, I gotta listen to this guy, like, do the podcast. But when you really listen, I mean, he's so masterful, such a masterful communicator. He has very rich life experience. And when you think about an individual like him who has close relationships with so many other incredible people, you really have to listen closely, because it's kind of like these authors we're talking about, right? It's not just Ivan Misner's ideas that are being validated. It's all these incredible people that he's interacting with, and then he's passing on that knowledge. So I just, it's almost like the written word, right? Like when we read books, we get to glean some of the best knowledge and wisdom from authors throughout, centuries, and it's the same way when you talk with successful people, right? You get to kind of soak up all of their life experience and advice from lifetimes, not just careers, but lifetimes of success. And that's, I mean, on a personal note, like that's just a very important part of my process, is just trying to, having, it's like in meditation, they call it beginner's mind, just always be open and always be, learning from everyone around you, because everyone has their unique experience that we can learn from.
Yeah, well put. I know, Corey, just a time check, it's 11:40. We have a couple more questions. We can maybe do the short version, then we'll end there. But I think it's interesting here just to reiterate that building a story brand. And I know Corey might have thought that we had already covered this, but I think this is an interesting distinction. That most people get this wrong about building a story brand. If you don't mind just summarizing what people get mostly wrong about building a story brand that you get when you read this book.
Was that for me or for Corey?
Oh, that's for you.
What people get wrong about building a story brand. Well, I don't know if this is what you're thinking of, Dave, but one thing that can happen that we end up doing as, founders or owners or leaders is we end up telling our own story and sort of positioning ourselves as the hero. And, we see this in the fitness industry all the time, right? You see these perfect bodied trainers saying, look at how amazing I am, and you can be just like me, right? Which I think you can sell thousands of dollars worth of whatever program you're selling or service you're selling. But I think if you are the guide helping other people become the hero, you can sell millions of dollars worth of products and services. And that's ultimately what we should be in this for, is not to make because the funny thing about it is, if you position yourself as the guide and your client or your customer or your, whoever you're helping in your nonprofit as the hero, you become the hero during the journey. You also become a hero by helping other people. And that's another thing that Ivan Misner, is all about as well, right? Giver's gain. That's the whole foundational principle at BNI. And that also is what Rotary Mastermind is about, is we are there to give valuable information and life experience to the people who come to this event. Because it comes back, whether you call it karma or business or whatever it is. I firmly believe that if you're out there helping people, it's going to come back around to you.
I know Corey might have some thoughts on that too. And I know Corey and I have kind of talked about this. And another model that we've talked about on this show is called tribal leadership, where if you stop at the I'm great, you're never going to get quite to the expert status, like you're saying. So yeah. I love how you word that from a perspective of trainers. And we've all seen folks on the internet too that are maybe advertising things that are just wild and not really, they don't kind of fit that model in terms of, connecting with people. So Corey, I was going to see if you had any other comments. Otherwise we can just end with the number 7 and we'll be done for today.
Yeah, I'll just ask you. So number 7, who is Rotary Mastermind for, and how can people register?
So I would say that Rotary Mastermind is for any organizational leader who feels stuck. You may work for a big organization, or you may be the founder of a large organization, maybe a publicly traded company, and you might need some leadership advice. You may be one of these people that Dave mentioned earlier on. You know, maybe you're a small business owner and you don't even know how you're going to make your next payroll, right? And you got cash flow problems, or you got operating expense problems, or you got sales problems. Or maybe you're crushing it and you're in a medium or small size business that's growing and you don't know how to scale it and you need help with that. Whoever you are, if you are struggling to get to the next level and you need support, this is for you. And even if you just like pizza, this is for you, because New Parkway's got great food, and you'll have a good time there. Please register for this event. You can go to the Oakland Rotary website, oakland-rotary.org, and just go to the event calendar. And on May 18th, you'll see a link to register. And it's a free event, and it's really going to be, I think it's going to be an inspiring event. I really think there's going to be so much great energy around this. You'll get to see me up on stage emceeing. You'll see Dave Kersen behind the scenes. He's our AV guy, always crushing it with the camera. And yeah, it's going to be, I think it's going to be a really incredible thing for Oakland leaders to sort of rally around.
Yeah, well put. And I'll just add that this is part of a ongoing series. We're going to do this quarterly. We may do things. There is going to be some more kind of promotion around these ideas as kind of a system of ideas to reach out to people and attract them to our club and show them that you're kind of not alone out there, that there's a mastermind here in Rotary to help you and introduce you to people who are going to really help take your organization to the next level. And with that, Jesse, thanks for coming on. You're great on podcasts. I know you're a great podcaster yourself, you and Liam. So it was a pleasure to have you for our last episode for a short while here. And
yeah, well, thank you guys for having me. It's a pleasure each time I'm on your show, and always a pleasure interacting with each of you. Corey, I still remember your presentation that you delivered to my BNI chapter back in 2020, which was just a tough time for the world. And I think all the time actually about what you said, where when times are tough, it's sometimes a lot of the time our vision shrinks and our gaze steers downward. But actually, when times are tough, that's when we need to expand our vision and elevate our vision. I really, honestly, I've thought about that on at least like a monthly basis since you gave that presentation. So thank you for, you've influenced me, and I thought that was very inspirational. And, so yeah, thank you.
I'll just end with one little tidbit of life experience in this book that I was reading. Even if you've just sold your most successful business, Rotary Mastermind can still be for you, because I think that I've heard that can be, as we saw from that story in Profit First, that can be one of the most dangerous times when you have a big victory. What do you do next? And it really comes down to the fundamentals and being solid on, not kind of forgetting the fundamentals of business and life, so to speak. So, well,
yep, well put.
Great work, guys. And we'll leave it there for Quantum Leap. And thanks for listening. We'll look forward to seeing when we come back up on the air.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.